Hey, CC Strong with Spilling the LT, and today's LT letter to the liars is to the commander who signed off on my intention for discipline. The same commander who I was assigned to immediately following the lies being stacked. Now, let me give you a little bit of background before I get into actually reading the letter to this person. I was an acting captain, a unit commander. So usually that position is taken up by a captain. And in my situation, the food services unit is run by a lieutenant sitting in the unit commander position. So, in essence, they are the one that is assigned everything and full control within that unit. Because it is a unit commander position, even though I'm a lieutenant who normally reports to a captain, as a unit commander, I report it to a commander. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense to people who don't know the inner workings of the department. However, it's significant in the fact that immediately when I was transferred, I was assigned to reach out to this commander, the commander that this letter is for, the commander who really shooed me away, in all honesty, and sent me to peers at my same rank to report to. But anyway, the immediate initial transfer out of my position as a unit commander with over 200 employees, a $30 million budget, reaching 65 locations all over Los Angeles County with food distribution, out of 8 locations within the county of Los Angeles, kitchens, 5 of which were in our jail facilities. And then we also had 2 cafes and a hospital. All of that under that command, and I reported to a commander. In an effort to lessen that, I kept being sent to other people, even people my own rank, to get information that I needed. And as I questioned more and more, which I don't think anybody was expecting, it just got worse. It was almost as if, how dare she be upset that we moved the finish line for her in processes that for everybody else seem different. And before you start saying, oh my gosh, it's all in her mind, it's all in her head, I have documentation of the things that I'm speaking about. It's not just me making it up. I contacted the commander that I'm speaking of. This commander was signed over the unit that I was assigned to. And the comparison of what I was doing in my assignment with food services compared to what I was assigned to do once at the ACB unit was night and day. I was stripped of all responsibilities, and anyone having that happen would have their resume damaged. And that was right out of the gate. That meant that you immediately already knew that I was going to be guilty and you were going to give me discipline. I would challenge anyone to say that I'm wrong in that, because finding something a little bit more suitable probably would have been the best bet. But of course, if you move the finish line, depending on who the person is involved, then there you have it. If you already had your script and you were ready to go, it might have also been why this commander wanted nothing to do with it. Unfortunately, his name was used 3 times in this whole process, and I only spoke with him once. The day that I called him right after all of this took place. He signed as acting on behalf of the chief on one document. He signed on the intention for me to receive discipline. Wow. And his name was thrown in for being the person who was authoring my evaluations that they played games with and tried to move around. Dear Commander, who allowed your signature to be used in this overall process, I harbor no ill will toward you. I remember a pleasant conversation I had with you maybe a few months before all of this happened. And it was an interesting conversation because you gave me a beautiful compliment about me. And I thanked you for it. We were standing in the executive parking lot, both of us probably heading home. But anyway, I remember you sitting in a meeting with five other people when I was able to put together a team at FSU and open for the first time and historically a cafe within the Hall of Justice headquarters bureau. I remember you sitting in on a meeting in May of the same year we opened that cafe when the person who was in charge of personnel and finances had a problem because she didn't quite understand how I could have come up with all of this. No experience in food industry, but putting myself through and getting certified for that industry. She couldn't understand how I did it. So she was angry that I had met with someone that the chief sent me to meet with. This person, a director on our department, I knew when he was a young intern during a time when I was overseeing a grant for a youth center for the department. I met him years and years prior to that meeting day, and it was his decision to come to my office. But by doing so, he let me know that and fleshed out that someone must have been watching every move that I made because this person counting the beans, so to speak, and over personnel, she was in charge of all of the finances and the tracking. Same person who couldn't understand why overtime was being reported at $4,000 in my unit before I took over and started counting it. And it was actually more like 40 or 50,000, depending on the month. But yet she was counting all of the beans. Anyway, I digress. This person asked for the commander to meet with me, and I was told that the person that I had met with, who came to my office, who I knew from way back when, was a very intelligent man, and that they didn't want me meeting with him by myself. How condescending is that? But again, if I highlight those type of things, I get the people who say, oh my gosh, everything is about race. Well, what would you think it is when my career is going well? When I opened a cafe, when we changed the food and actually had a demonstratively different way of serving the food to inmates, and even the inmates were happy about the changes, not knowing we had made changes actually for the benefit of both sides. Training for all of the supervisors within my unit and structuring schedules so that people had fairness in how they actually reported to work. And it wasn't just about the managers being able to dominate and do people wrong according to who liked them or who didn't. All of that. And yet you couldn't believe that I had come up with putting together a cafe opening? Wow. If nothing else, neutral until you see what I'm capable of. But almost out of the gate, there was this fear. So, this person in charge of the money and the personnel had told me that she had laryngitis. So, while sitting in the meeting, the majority of the drama was coming from the commander. Then suddenly she spoke up. Laryngitis, when I tried to call her when she sent me an email telling me I needed to be in the commander's office, and this was the time. No coordination or respect for my time, once again. But why is that? There's the sound of that deck of cards shuffling again that people all say about pulling a card. And again, I say I can't pull a card from a deck that's not extended to me. And that day, sitting me in the corner while six people were, in essence, waiting on my response and hung on every response that I gave, I told them all that I was willing to package up everything I had done and give it to this woman who obviously was angered by my intellect. It didn't come through her, and I didn't get her blessing on moving forward. But, Commander, you were sitting silently in the corner of that room that day. Not your fault, but that's just an example of the few encounters we've had. That day in the parking lot, in passing in the hallway speaking, and that day in the meeting. So to see your name on my discipline, sir, it stung a little bit because I had never done anything wrong to you, and definitely nothing that would have warranted lies and storytelling in a case that was written like a 2-year-old wrote it. That's not an insult, that's real. Because the whole entire case was leading questions and people saying about how they felt, even making statements about things that occurred. But there were plenty of witnesses around in these meetings that they kept speaking to, and no one else was questioned. How does that happen? What type of investigation is that? To say nothing for the investigators that put it all into place with the glue that they were either eating or playing with on their hands. Because that case should never have been written. It should never have been opened because it was chock full of repeat claims that didn't work time after time after time with previous supervisors until they found the right puppet. And unfortunately, Commander, your name was used and you signed sight unseen, allowing things to happen and to take place that should not have. Sad. Ruining my career means little to you, I'm sure. Doesn't bother you. You don't care. I get that. So you shouldn't care about this letter. The letter to you being used as a pawn each time the chief was out sick. Oh, I'm so sorry I haven't been able to get back to you. Oh, I'm still working on your evaluations. Oh, I'm just returning. I've been out of the office for a while. She was probably out of the office more so than the time she was in, at least by the many emails that she responded back with that. I'm sorry. I haven't been able to because I've been away. Maybe it was how she got you to sign in her place, just being absent, and you're just absently signing everything. Well, the captain says that you actually then passed that on to him, and he didn't bother to read it anyway because he was trusting you. Pretty sad. I think the thing that stood out the most for me was when they tried to double issue the same evaluations to get me to sign a second time on a face page after shredding, according to the captain, what he wrote as outstanding. The level of slimy that it takes to do people this way is off the charts. And the dismissive, I don't care, I'll sign whatever, doesn't matter to me, is why we stay stuck as an organization. It's why we remain in headlines as an organization. It's why we're not progressing, but we pump our fist in the air and claim to be the best agency ever, just in name and size. So, Commander, thank you for the compliment in the parking lot that day. Thank you for remaining silent, at least, in that meeting where people were condescending, rude, and disrespectful to someone who actually is intelligent, even wrapped in this packaging. And thank you for being a pawn in a scheme to drain my career and my livelihood of all that it was supposed to continue to display in a positive. I was at best quietly doing my job, not bothering anyone and definitely not you. But it was just easier to go along with the newly appointed acting executives who were acting as if they were real human beings with hearts and thoughts about other people, and they could care less. I'm leaving with the idea that you were fearful of meeting with me and speaking with me. So that's why you sent me to deal with fellow lieutenants. The alternative would be that you were looking down at me as if I wasn't worth it. And I don't want to believe that about you. So I have for you nothing but the best. And I hope that it was all worth it to you and it worked out. I pray that life is not as unkind as you were in doing what you did using your signature against mine. It was a ding toward me and my family, but I don't wish ill will for you and yours. Sincerely, CC Strong, spilling the LT. Bye for now.